He's a highly respected author and political analyst. Doctor, would you like to tell us, first let's talk to this particular issue, the handshake and the furore that it has caused back in the United States.
Well, Cuba is a very contentious issue in the U.S. Republicans don't like Cubans that much. So this kind of plays itself here as well. But it's also testimony to the iconic stature of Madiba in the sense that he was loved by everyone. So we are not surprised that he would bring everyone in death because that's what he represented as a person.
Yes. Now, the fact that, U.S. President Barack Obama, extended his hand at that moment, was that a fleeting gesture, or do you think it's a sign of things to come?
Well, Obama fancies himself as, he aspires to be a Mandela figure.
Yes.
So you cannot come to a Mandela funeral and bring on your own squabbles.
Of course.
It is a funeral, after all, of this great person. So you have to honor this person in the way that you know how. You have to live by the values of this person. You have to epitomize what this person lived for. So I think what Obama was saying is, I am here to honor Nelson Mandela, and these are all Nelson Mandela's friends.
Absolutely.
So I cannot come here and snub the friend.
Yes.
It would have been idiotic of him to do that.
Yes, and I think also stemming from the remarks and the speech that he made. I mean, he looked at the impact Mandela's teachings and Mandela's presence had on him and his own work.
That's very true. But you see, we need to appreciate Nelson Mandela as part of a collective ANC anti-apartheid struggle, because Madiba inherited a huge anti-apartheid struggle. This is the genius about this anti-apartheid struggle, in the sense that it was the first international movement in the 20th century which posited the South African problem as a human rights problem. That is why we're able to attract so many diverse groups of people, because we posited the South African question as a human rights question. And we're able to mobilize the international community. And of course, at the time, you had CNN just coming in the 80s. So this became a global movement because of the ANC's international presence. So Madiba then inherits this international network. And the ANC deliberately used him as a symbol of this international movement. So when we look at Madiba's role, we need to understand it within what he found, this network that he came into when he came into prison or out of prison in 1990. So for me, it's both credit to the force of the personality, but also the organizational work that preceded Madiba whilst he was still in prison.
Most definitely. Now, Mr. Mandela has been described as a humble and selfless man by many of the speakers yesterday. What can South Africa and the rest of the world take from that?
Well, people will take what they want to take, I suppose. But the essence of the man is indisputable. Self-sacrifice, he dedicated himself to the cause of South African people. He put their interests first. He was very humble. This, of course, doesn't mean that he had no strong sense of self. Some people would say he was, at times he bordered on the arrogance, a messianic figure. He fancied himself to be a great man, but he used that sense of himself to influence things into a positive direction. There's nothing wrong with ambition. There's nothing wrong with one thinking great of oneself. But it is what we do as different people, what we do with the power, with the positions that we got. Madiba used that position. In as much as he enjoyed being there, he had a huge ego like most of us. But he could see a bigger picture. So he used his leadership, the veneration that he enjoyed, to transform South Africa into a different society. So his was a transformative leadership, willing to risk his own popularity. But he realized that it was not about him, but taking society into a different level to appeal to the better angel in all of us. That's what he did.
Sure. Now, outside of politics, as a man and as a father, what can we learn from Madiba?
Well, I don't think his kids think he was necessarily a great father. The family obviously endured a lot of hardships.
Yes, there was separation.
separation, every child deserved to have his or her father there raising them. He was not there. Even the wedding with, or the marriage with Winnie Mandela lasted, they married within a few months or so. He was in prison. So they had to suffer because of his incarceration. So I don't think I would be qualified really to speak on him as a father. Perhaps his kids can speak on that. But as a statesman, because I encountered Madiba as a statesman, he has defined really different generations. From 1960, 1955 perhaps, when he became a public figure. He has preoccupied South African public discourse. We never knew him, but we always knew that. We've never seen him, but we somewhat felt his presence, even though our parents could not speak about him. But when we kneel down to pray at my house, for instance, growing up, my grandmother would always say, our Father, bless our true leaders who are at the island. She would not say this during the day. She would not speak openly. But at prayer time, she would always pray. That's how we were introduced to Madiba, through prayers, because he was a band figure.
Exactly, and this is clearly an indication of the extreme proliferation of his presence. Given the fact that he suffered that separation, his family suffered that separation, the sacrifices that he made, the sacrifices that they made, it was all for the people of South Africa. And that is the celebration of the man and his legacy that we need to talk about today.
But it also shows that you cannot suppress the truth. You cannot perpetuate an injustice. Because people know how they ought to be treated. We all think quite highly of ourselves. We would not tolerate to be treated shabbily. And we knew that we were worthy of equal treatment like everyone else, because everyone before us had fought against colonialism and apartheid because they refused to be treated as second-class citizens. Mandela is born into a resistance movement in the Eastern Cape. His forefathers had been fighting since 1795, waging wars against colonialists. So at some point, obviously, the system had to crumble. So one of the lessons is that injustice cannot be perpetuated infinity. Because people will always raise up against it. They might be silent now, but one day they will rise up.
And that's precisely what Madiba himself said, that tyranny will end. The tyranny cannot last forever. Well, we've taken lots of positive things from Madiba's life and teachings and the sacrifices that he's made. And it's certainly his stature has increased, he's magnified. And he stands tall today throughout the length and breadth of the world, the globe, as a shining beacon of hope and a shining example of mankind. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Dr. Mcebisi Ndletyana, who is the CEO of the Mapungubwe Institute of Strategic Reflection. Well, moving on now, United States Secretary